Peace, peace, peace. Greetings, greetings, greetings. Get your popcorn ready. Start this video off by saying give an honor to source, creator, whatever your higher power is. We want to start this off with gratitude. For self, for you getting up, for your health, for your well-being, for breathing, for just showing up for you. Most importantly, let's give honor to the ancestors, known and unknown, that came before us. Those of you that aren't familiar with when I speak about ancestors, meaning those that came before us prior to our incarnation or being here. So that being said, just give gratitude, shout out to you. I always want to say that, as I ain't got to go into detail. I was on the toilet earlier, I was just like, Spirit say, shout out to those of you that are facing yourselves in these ever-changing moments, these major shifts, eclipses, those of you that are so in tune or coming online or becoming more consciously aware of what it is you're here to do, focusing on your mission, blocking out the BS, calling back your energy, standing in your truth, all those things. So, and more so, again, shout out to the healers, the shadow workers, the beings that know that how important and more so how vital, showing up for yourself, man. Men, women, kids, all to the oneness of everything. I have some notes here today. Usually I really don't do this, but I got some notes. And it's not so much as just notes. This is kind of like been nudging or eating at me for a while. But it's very vital. So get your popcorn ready. Get ready to cry. Get ready to let go. Some may say release, but we like to say let go. Get ready for some triggering, because when you come on this channel, there's some accountability, okay? And more so, again, this isn't a place where, or a channel where it's about beating yourself up. We've all been beaten, kicked while we're down, devalued in so many ways. We all have been affected by whether past, present, and or future. We all have been a part of this ripple effect of what's going on globally, societally, mentally, emotionally, physically, environmentally. I used to have real issues with that LY words. I used to be like Lily. I don't know about the other one, like emotional Lily. But anywho, we all have had some type of ripple or been affected, or however you want to say it, by the currents. I would like to say it's like the ocean currents right now. The emotions are high. Where the topic and topics that I'm going to speak about is mainly what I'm feeling and individually, and also what I'm picking up on collectively. When I mean collectively, that means like the energy forecast of what's going on, what I feel in the world. And if you don't know, like sometimes if you're new to this, I'm just letting you know, like I'll be here, but there's something that I may say that may catch your attention. If not, let the rest go. I'm not asking anyone to accept, embrace, because I understand and understand, and those who are aware of this, again, when your intentions is pure, that's all. That's, nothing else really. We express over here. We don't explain, and that's a huge difference in that. And having gotten to that place within myself, it's a huge difference to be secure within self rather than focusing on externally how people feel about you or what their opinions. It's been a process for myself and others. So the topics that I do have, and probably going to be probably more than one video, I already know for sure, because I'm not going to try to squeeze everything into one. But most importantly, this one is so vital because I can relate it to my present, past, and how it's actually, like, if you'd ask me, like I said, I don't proclaim to be a therapist, or what you call it, like any of those things, like to say, oh, I don't care about that. It's from my own experiences, my own awareness, and I'm not asking anyone to accept the truth. Like, again, it's just really truly for activation or bringing more awareness to self, which me realizing how much of an inspiration I am to myself for having getting this far. Like, for real, kudos to all of you. Like, for real, like, wherever you are, doesn't matter what you have materialistically. None of that matters to where, like, it's like right now what's so valuable is a sense of peace. We're all looking for that. We're all seeking that. No matter what's happening on outside of us, outside your door, anything. A part of us here on the soul level, on the spiritual level, is trying to make amends with whatever it is we're going through, and doing our best to just find peace either where we are presently or in the world, on your job, whatever you're doing. But anywho, the topics, again, I'm going to probably make part 3, 4, 5, because I love speaking. And this has a lot to do with even the topic, because so the topics that I'm going to speak about is related to repressed emotions. Then you have suppressed emotions. And a lot of this you can research, come into your own understanding, overstanding, or awareness, clarity of it. Like I said, the topics is repressed emotion, suppressed emotion, and a lot to do with, because Spirit was like, you need to talk about that. I'm like, what? But again, I'm honored because the youth needs this. We need this. The bigger picture of this is like, again, I express to others, it's like, I sit with, well, on my channel, I sit with this before I come here. Sometimes it don't even gotta make sense, because I've sat with to others, meaning, but it makes sense to me. So I've gotten clarity. So I did write down my notes or whatever. But a lot of this, again, there's so many things I could talk about when it comes to the ideas of how this looks for myself, you, and this is what, again, this is about a holistic teaching or healing and guiding one back to self. So I'm trying to see how am I going to start this, because all of it's so amazing, because again, repressed emotions, those that aren't aware, because we all can have our own interpretation of what this looks like. I thought repressed emotions and suppressed were kind of similar. Suppress and repress. And automatically when I look at those words, it's like pressure. So all of which I'm realizing that this has a lot to do with being under pressure or consumed by pressure. And through the process of that, it creates something greater than what you were. So I'm going to dive a little deep into that, because the notes that I wrote down, because I got them in so many different places, man. Let's see. Suppressed emotions. Okay. Which one is this? Okay, I believe this is repressed. I'm going to do it in my own way, because like I love what I do. It's just authentic. Again, it's not about receiving. Matter of fact, let me get this out of here. Like, say this. Shout out to those that are doing the inner work, and those that are still on this path or probably coming into it. This ain't for the faint of heart. Like, no, all bullshit aside, because I'm becoming so aware of consciously where I'm at, and then it allows me to even see and have more compassion for myself and others who are in this place and it doesn't even matter their age. Like I'm seeing, like what I'm studying and coming into and sharing with you is that I'm very aware of these people who have these or like are experiencing this or have some type of connection to this. And we all know someone that has this connection, and more so what our or probably experience this presently. Um and so that being said, make sure. So repressed emotions can be a way to protect your mind from painful situations, such as, like, let's say, um, someone such as myself being a victim of child abuse by a parent or a caregiver. And I've spoken a lot about this, and the thing um, how I can link repressed emotions and also suppressed emotions to this is how, let's say, me just mentioning how repressed emotions can be a way to protect your mind from painful situations. So let's say me being at that moment being abused or having an abusive parent or caretaker, um when you're a child and you're just in this, you see yourself as innocent, but being that you became a victim at that time, or pain was inflicted, whether verbally, physically, and how that played on your mental, that links to your mental well-being and health. Because you know I myself, how this was transitioning and evolving into my adulthood, if you want to call it that, still realizing how much of my inner child was harmed, my inner wounds, being that I now, and processing through, um if you want to call it adulthood, because I don't even like using that term, because it's like I feel we still all, whether we're healing through it or haven't acknowledged or will acknowledge consciously or unconsciously, how we have inner wounds. So that being said, it's like I could reflect on times where how I transitioned from being in relationships, whether teenager, whatever it is, or elementary, from the abuse being inflicted, and then gradually come into certain ages to where I try to avoid or um just not want to feel, in a way, these emotions and acknowledge these emotions. And so those situations will replay or can replay in our minds. So this could be linked to, like, so I'm just go through my notes as I do this. A lot of this could be linked to like fear, anger, pain, and shame. And so um man. And so again, yeah, what the repressed can look like is sometimes we may unconsciously avoid or have avoided or ignored and blocked out these emotions or these feelings, because going from relationship to relationship, or more so like dealing with partners and or people and or the parent and caregiver, and naturally trying to not, the anxiety can create these, replay these experiences, create it, and by it being repressed, from avoiding it, that can create, let me make sure I'm on this, because it also mentioned here, like, a person not remembering how they felt during the traumatic experience, basically, like, numbing it, or a numb feeling, not feeling the emotions, when or recalling the emotions when they felt it. So that repress, meaning that like recycling or repressed. It's like something that's been pushed down in a way, or avoidant, to where again now you're seeing in society. And this is why I want to bring this up, because my own experience from repressed emotion is how I would at times, not even realizing, ignoring these things, trying to block them out. And then that led me to getting more into depth about, because I probably put all this together, to tendency to avoid, yeah, painful thoughts, memories. So me linking this to suppressed emotions, and it says suppressed emotions is some, or suppression can lead to like being overwhelmed or fight or flight. I noted that, like, when certain circumstances happen, it's like, um, I feel those repressed emotions can come up, and we're not even consciously knowing what we're doing, because we haven't had caregivers, parents, or guardians who have shown us the emotional intelligence on how to feel rather than to avoid. And when it's with the repressed emotion, when you're talking about unconsciously doing something, that could look like, let's say, how could I use this? Like unconsciously aware that, um, how we speak to someone. Because this was something with me. It's like, I was spoken to verbally, not just physically, like spanked and all that stuff, but I was spoken to slap, but I was spoken to verbally, to where I picked up these habits. I inherited at that time these habits of unconsciously from my mom at that time, and grandmother and other people. And this is not to make anyone deem them, devalue them in any way, because again, when we're talking about unconscious, some people aren't aware. That means unaware of the fact of what they're doing, how they're doing it. And that's why I'm going to show you how it, when, noting what repress and then suppress. Repress is in a sense of, again, the unawareness consciously that we're wanting to avoid these painful situations or traumatic experiences. And so we're avoiding these uncomfortable feelings, pushing the painful thoughts and memories away. And, to basically, it's like to allow yourself to forget them. So, um, and this also says here, like, the reason being for fear, out of fear doing this, or connected to one's positive self-image, like of unprocessed emotions. And again, we've seen this play out so many times, to where people have repressed emotions, then we immediately judge them outside looking in, not realizing, well, what's the root of that behavior? What's the cause of that? So from my experience, again, seeing my mom, being around, because you got to realize, as a child, you go to the root of what we have experienced. And you're seeing people who have grown up in verbal abusive homes, unemotional, available parents, all those things links to that. So you can see that play out again eventually in your partnerships, and from childhood leading into adulthood. And that's why you see I express now the mental health awareness when I'm going to talk about, again, how the fear, anger, pain, and shame is linked to all of those things, whether repressed and suppressed. So my mom, or being in environments where I was yelled or spoken to harshly, um, I picked up that habit. It's like a child is a sponge. They're absorbing these things. And I'm seeing that currently even with myself, um, with the fact that my partner and I, and this is just to bring awareness to people who have a child, or bringing or know of a child or kid who, we could automatically see and judge their situation, but not realizing they've either up what has been programmed in them subconsciously, and then them unconsciously realizing or unaware that their behavior is affecting, and how it will affect them in the long run, meaning from child until they get certain ages to where it's, again, unconscious behavior to where the kids are being yelled or whatever it is, the abuse, to where they pick up these habits. The abuser is like, again, the loop, the cycle of how someone is abused, it becomes the abuser. Speaking from experience. And I acknowledge that. And I can see how now it says the reason being for fear, and I was at this place, or a fear of really speaking up, saying how I feel, because I wasn't taught that. I feel sad. I'm scared. I'm this. And that's that inner child, the inner essence that wants to say these things. But again, unconsciously, how we have been programmed subconsciously, and what we have seen, we haven't had these people, caregivers, or persons, or individuals in our life who demonstrated that, who acted that out. So in doing so, we unconsciously are living out these dysfunctional attributes or actions, to where to protect our own, in a way, protect our own, to show up positively. It's like it's so much mental confusion, because think about how you paint this image, whether TV or anything else, this image of, oh, being a thug, or being whatever it is, whether you're talking about athlete. It's so many things that, again, is about, or being this, no matter what, or, confidently being dysfunctional, confidently, unconsciously, confidently being like, to portray the world this positive self-image, like, oh, I do all these, this is who I really am, but not even seeing the fact of like what causing that behavior, or what has this person learned or seen, or experienced for their behaviors. And this is everyone, because again, this is people who may have a lot of money. This is people who, again, have all these things and empty inside. So when you relate that to how, not to mention, we can see from the outside looking in, social media, how all of this plays a major role into the fact of like, how do you know what these people don't have, whatever repressed emotions they have, whatever suppressed emotions that they're trying to push down actively. And I'm going to get into that. So again, seeing what my mother went through, and seeing what I experienced, and seeing even other siblings, speak to people like I would, because I know I have a powerful voice. And then coming into my power, I had to first realize, like, unconsciously, then I became consciously aware, accountable of how, even in relationships, partnerships, whatever, how unconsciously I was speaking to people. Then that really reflected back to me how what so much of the repressed emotions ancestrally that was connected with my mother. Because again, going back to the fact of how when I look at how her relationship with her mother is, that says a lot about even what my grandmother and her mother went through. I didn't come from a home or homes or environments where people openly spoke about their emotions or expressed themselves freely in a healthy manner. So this is the unconsciously awareness, well, the unconscious ways of how we all, or of someone who, again, being in environments where we didn't have people who demonstrated love or their emotions in a healthy way, in a way that looks like, hey, I feel this way. I am hurt. I'm sad, or I'm angry right now. I need a moment, the I, in the sense of acknowledging self. So, again, these seeing from, and being where I am now, the awareness of seeing the unconscious repressed emotions in individuals that I grew up with. And then seeing also what I'm getting to, the suppression, the suppress, like literally purposely pushing away, or actively pushing away these emotions. So again, these we have to really, not say forcefully, but see how these environments or places, and now that we're coming out of that, because it took, if I knew that I was, having come into this awareness of how I was unconsciously spoken to, and seeing how that replayed or cycle or looped through other people in the family dynamic, I realized like how much of these memories and thoughts and painful feelings that so many people through time, through ancestrally, through the lineage, have like so much repressed emotions. And then you see some who actively, which is suppression, actively push them down, away. Whether it speaks about how, let me see where I can get to this. Wow, this is a good one. So it says, the thing about repressed emotion is that it can lead one from child into what they call adulthood, to repressed emotions and to deny their own needs. Oh my gosh. That's a big one. And that I can even connect that to, and that's going to be another video, like narcissism. And this is why I see how much, and it talks about how you're denying this. When you deny your own needs, that can look like denying your own emotions, ignoring your own emotions or feelings, avoiding communication, avoiding touch, distrust. And so now being aware of that, I'm realizing how many partnerships, and not just partnerships with people, most importantly with myself. Because if it brings it back to me, and I've been at that time, or we have collectively, individually also been pouring from an empty cup, because due to these repressed emotions, we know that people have that is centered around fear and anger and pain and shame. Um, these things lead to, it says, abuse, addiction can be like from the cause of what you experience. The abusive behavior, whether you've been a victim or inflicted it, probably due to the fact that the one who inflicted it most likely had to experience it. Abuse, addiction. This can lead to addiction, whether drugs, mental illness, because no one talks about these problems. You know how, especially if you want to use a term like melanated communities, these are things that are not, and this happens everywhere, but most importantly from my experience, no one really talks about the problems. I was the first one to really try to address certain things, and with that comes a lot of rejection, not being liked, not being accepted. And that's one of the most challenging things, because as, if you want to use the term healer or shadow worker, or one who really comes into the awareness of trying to be a generational curse breaker, these things come up, like knowing what a repressed emotion is. And that is linked so much, I feel, not just to the patriarchal, but just as much as the patriarchal, but also just as much as the matriarchal. They're both intertwined or connected into where if you really look at the matriarchal daughter, mother, and grandmother, think about how much repressed emotions, and then how much they've been imbalanced or pushed out and devalued in so many ways, to where they've been in positions or playing a role to where not only they don't have awareness of their repressed emotions, but also how they actively, which I'm going to speak about, this is actively suppressing their emotions because of trying to live, like trying to survive rather than thrive. So suppressed emotion, it says suppression is actively pushing uncomfortable thoughts, feelings, memories away. And literally actively doing it. Like no communication, not saying nothing, shutting down, and all of that, we can attest to that. That's things where, again, what I've experienced from my childhood and people I love is that it's easy to shut down. And how this response or this reaction can look from what you see, social media. It says the phone, the TV, and other things, to avoid facing oneself, feelings, emotions, blockages, you know, things generational that has been passing through the lineage for so long. And so some of us are here to acknowledge those things. So think about, again, how this plays. If it goes back to the matriarchal, like especially the mothers and them being the first teachers, because again, mama is teaching you how to nurture yourself, love yourself. And these things are internal emotions. You know, what you feel, all these things start from within first and then outwardly expressed. So when you look at the term repressed, suppressed, and depression, these things are an internal this is an internal battle, and also has an effect on this is why you see a lot of now coming out of the survival, because a lot of people are facing themselves or having to with this awakening, and you coming into your awareness, is you're seeing the dysfunctionality, having grown up in a dysfunctional family, the abuse, the addictions, and all that centered around the mental health, mental health awareness, or the mental illness that, again, we have all been affected by, but become so consumed and just think that that has been what we're supposed to conform to. And so again, you can see it daily, and even from my own experience, having talking to my partner about, like, you know, sometimes like, let's put down the phone, let's do things. And so what that does is that if we're talking about repressed or suppressed emotions, when you're in any type of relationship or partnerships, especially when you're meeting someone or connecting with someone, and this is very important with a lot of people who have kids, you're talking about coming together, whether you co-create or not. You're talking about whatever that person's lineage, whatever they have experienced ancestrally now. This was vital. This is the one that's vital, because it's showing me a lot, not only with myself, but with the partner, your partner, because it plays a lot even into how suppressed emotions. And I told you, suppressed is actively, you know, first I'm going to read, actively pushing things down. So, you know, when you're connecting with these people, or have had multiple partners, now let's get on the spiritual aspect of this. You're also talking about the fact of these people have had repressed whatever that has happened in their lineage, and how we're talking about going to relationship and connection and not realizing, like, the mental well-being of these people. Because you're talking about a society or an environment we grew up in that, again, school, because that's why all this shit is falling apart. They don't teach you about emotions. They don't teach you about repress, suppress, because let's keep this shit authentic. Because you're talking about, if we're talking about people who have been abused and come into addictions, and then all that is connected to your mental well-being, you know, which is your spiritual well-being, your physical well-being, because your mental is just as linked to your physical. So when I speak about things like this, or when you start to really acknowledge and speak about things that's happening, Of course, you're going to be called crazy or out of your mind or whatever it is, or the devil. They can call you everything, but the thing that you are not acknowledging and pointing out is the mental fuckery or the dysfunctionality that your university, your schools, um, whatever you have been to, does not speak about, does not share, does not encourage any of it. Because think about that. The powers that used to be, or, doesn't want you to come into the awareness of empowering yourself or know who you are or speaking, reclaiming your power for self. Because that affects and has a ripple effect on everyone. That's the power of being a generational curse breaker. Letting those things go, creating a new lineage, creating a new idea of what, experiencing life more harmoniously, peacefully. If there's been dysfunction, then when I'm looking at repressed emotion, it said it is linked to health problems. Your emotional well-being is connected to your physical well-being, your physical health. It also says repressed emotions are linked to high risk of depression, high blood pressure, heart disease, digestive problems, infections, low energy, pain. And how that can look in relationships is saying that you need to face conflicts, or I know that this is, face, conflict instead of avoidance of conflict, like meaning like actually talk about these things. And also how it links to relationship is being intimate with others. Because if you were sexually abused, mentally, verbally, all those things is linked to repressed emotion, whether it be repressed emotions or things in your womb as a woman, repressed emotions in your body that unconsciously you're unaware of. But sometimes because society has taught us to think like, oh, having multiple partners or being this and doing that, and not realizing how much that affects your emotional well-being as a woman and man, your physical well-being. Because if we're just going here, 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 and not acknowledging the fact of like who we're connecting to spiritually, physically, so that intimacy is not just on a physical level. That intimacy is on a more on an intellectual level, on an emotional level. Because when you're opening yourself up, it's also not just a factor from that place. But when you do as a woman or a man, especially women, when you open yourself up, you're opening all of that up. So let me say that again. If you know yourself or had known people to have, we all have repressed or known mothers and fathers of people to actively suppress emotions, is to actively push it down, to avoid it in all ways. Then what do you think that as you intertwine and connect with people spiritually, physically, that's an exchange of energy. So with that being said, how all of this is connected is that a lot of us now are coming into that awareness that when you see these things, depression, high risk of blood pressure, all these things, and a lot of us know a lot of people with this or experience this, that is linked to repressed emotions. So those health problems that come from that is that high risk in what you see. And we know, and just from experience of knowing women that were pregnant, knowing women that have went through this, think about the repressed emotions and think about what you have suppressed emotionally, actively, after you have went through that you haven't spoken about in your relationships with the mother and or father of your kids. Not realizing how all of that is linked to the fact of, when you really see And this is something I'm so glad I'm speaking about this. When I look at repressed emotions and suppressed, it makes me highlight, because I don't have to say names, on not only what my mother and more so what other people's mothers and fathers, I see both repressed and suppressed because I see it actively in their actions. And I see it also more so to the depths of not just through their actions, but in their health. Because again, a lot of it is linked to fear of communication. And not knowing they never did have the guidance. So let's go back to, okay, repressing. This is really getting good. So again, think about how so much of the repressed emotions, your mother, grandmother, knowing what they experience, ancestrally, we don't have to go into depth, but you know where I'm getting at. Ancestrally, for those that do know, and this is for all cultures. And then you're seeing globally, not just the kids. You're talking about repressed emotions that have been passed through the wombs, and say through that repressed emotion, that repressed emotion, if you're not acknowledging what you're experiencing and ignoring it, and you inherit that from your mother and great grandmother and so forth, then the beauty of all of this is that you're reversing it. That's what generational curse is. You reverse. If you look at repress, you're reversing that. And so in that reversing that, let me say this first. Look how that could be linked to your health problems, not only with yourself, but a high-risk pregnancy. High-risk pregnancy because of so many things that have been avoided. And I like to use this terms. We talk about abuse, but if we're unconscious of what has been repressed, and then we consciously suppress it, that is a form of self-abuse. And I like the term self-abuse is because we know we're aware. And see, that could be linked to the fear of wanting to acknowledge the fact of this isn't okay. And it's okay not to be okay, because this too shall pass. But it's in honoring the fact of how that fear, could be fear, face everything and run, or face everything and rise. And a lot of us you can see that play out with a lot of people. They don't want to face things, so they run from it. And that's where the suppression can come in. They actively are running from what they want to feel and acknowledge and speak up and say. So, and then this harbors, again, the anger. This is linked to, I believe, suppression. It said probably both. I would say both, because the fear, anger, pain, and shame, I can see that. Okay, suppression for sure, because if you're actively suppressing these things and not wanting to speak about it, then you're running from it. And so that anger, because people get it misconstrued about how anger is to be honored. Emotions are to be honored. Let me make that very fucking clear. I have that notated, like I got sticky notes, and I put that around the house. I honor my emotions because we have been taught, again, to suppress it. And this is why you see the behavior patterns, because not only are repressed emotions are within people, but you have people actively suppressing through athletics, through their career, through self-abusive behavior, meaning that they're confidently, whether unconsciously and or confidently, in a way, hoarding this anger, the pain and shame, because the fear, because of how they don't want to be, protect that. And I've seen this play out through so many people. They don't want and this is how you can see people project. And I can see this link to repressed and suppressed emotion. Because if someone is unconsciously that they have repressed emotions, so sometimes they're not even aware. They're not even aware, or they become numb. See, repressed is when they become so numb that they don't even want or know, connecting to that traumatic experience. They become so numb to it that they don't even know how to feel. Mm. And then now you see some people who have suppressed emotion, who actively, if you're suppressing the fear, of avoiding it to speak about it, then you're also avoiding the anger, the pain, and the shame centered around the traumatic experience that you that you went through. So you can see people also project or hide these things. And I'm not saying everyone, like, I'm telling you to forcefully speak or do this, because it can look different for everyone. But what I'm saying, you have people who actively, and this is connected to narcissism, it's like they avoid other people. They don't care about other people's feelings in a way to avoid them, to avoid it. And I can see how from my own perception of it, how all of that can be connected. Because if we're unaware and unconsciously knowing what we're doing from having repressed emotion, then you see people actively suppressing it, avoiding it, the uncomfortable feelings. Then I can see how that could be linked to narcissism, because if you don't care about how others feel, you don't obviously care about how you feel. So then is when the projections come, and you can see people actively just trying to avoid what they need to feel and want others to, pay solely attention on them in a self-centered way, in a very selfish rather than selfless way. Because again, I feel there's a balance between that too. But it's in a way of, is that from that being or person, is the intent to be harmful, to inflict pain? Like, what's the motive? See, this goes back to so many people not realizing. I was at that place of unconsciously not realizing what we're doing. And this is why you're seeing globally, from social media and everything else, the mental illness around how the promotion of fear when you see on certain things, the promotion of anger. Because sometimes we don't even realize when we're looking at something and you're seeing how the program of people fighting or people certain things, that right there, you're feeding yourself that, listening and feeding yourself that. So that can look like, you don't know what that triggers in your memory or from your experience that you have subconsciously been programmed. And also linking to your pain, and see how that fear, anger, pain, and shame is connected. Because I'm going to let y'all go on this and that. Is that if the tendency to avoid uncomfortable feelings push painful feelings, thoughts, memories out of one's consciousness, this allows them to forget them. Reason being is for fear. So, and I believe that's the one to, you can research this. I would say research. I believe that's the one. Either that's repressed or suppressed. But either way, how that links to fear is that it keeps people in their comfortable zone, or be comfortable in what they're doing. So in avoiding that and avoiding uncomfortable feelings, it keeps them like, I can see how that it keeps them in a suppressive state, or in a place where they're so comfortable that they stay in the dark. And so that fear of really acknowledging it and pushing it away, that again, due to the connection and link to the childhood traumas or experience, that anger turns to rage, and that rage turns to violence, because that pain that you experience, again, that pain is linked to that anger. And that pain, that again, that anger turns into rage. That rage again promotes violence. And see how all of these emotions are linked when you're talking about shame. Shame is one of the lowest frequencies, or guilt, because think about how people, again, are actively not wanting to speak about what they have experienced due to the guilt and shame centered around the pain and fear. So the frustration and anger around that is just hoarded, and it's like a volcano ready to explode. And so think about how this happens in our childhood, and then we're gradually, whether repressed or suppress, not only the repressed, but we're suppressing these things into where this is where you see the violent behavior, domestic violence. You see the mental health illness being a highlight now, because these are things that are really have been happening to humanity or to people. And so you're talking about people who know, such as myself, the importance of sharing my truth, or not that it needs to be honored or praised. It's the fact of how I went from self-abuse to self-care. So, in healing through that, and how that looks may look totally different from you. And not pointing a finger and saying who's wrong or right or this and that. It's not even about that for me, because I got out of that to liberate myself, to feel like it wasn't about who did this wrong or right. Because again, everyone's awareness is different, or perception. And it was more so how I liberated myself through these things of seeing my role and seeing the polarity in what their role was, and giving gratitude to the fact of like, they literally reflected back what I experienced, or what I also experienced either with other people, or I was on the other side, whether I was a victim. Now I'm then being on the other side of being a victor, meaning walking in victory, to see the bigger picture of how all will, in a way, whether behavior is actively or unconsciously displayed in a way of love, or not, is more so me taking back my power, standing in my truth, and seeing the fact of, okay, what was my role, and then how I can take accountability. Because if we look at humanity in the world right now, what is that one thing that they're lacking or unaware of? It's not that we're lacking, because we have everything. It's just about going inward. It's more so the awareness around accountability, because there's been so much codependency, or in a way, external validation, acceptance, receiving so many things that don't have value. Because if we don't see our value, and we've been denying our own emotions due to whether it be repressed emotions, suppressed emotions, being influenced by narcissistic behaviors societally, social media, those who proclaim to be influencers but really aren't influencing you to love yourself, honor yourself, stand in your truth, be authentic. These are the same individuals who are falling from grace, because again, as the frequency rises and we come into our being authentic, which is, these are versions of ourselves. And in these versions, what I mean by versions, these are learning more about ourselves, is like the little boy who did experience, the little girl who did experience that trauma, whether mentally, verbally, physically, mentally, and how it plays into our physical well-being and our physical health. this is something now that is being so highlighted. So it has nothing at all to do with fucking, like, for some of us that are that knows, it's like, it has nothing to do with money or material things. I always, like, I've gotten to a place, and I'm so glad I talked about this, is that the things that I was uncomfortably living with, whether, traumatic experience connected to certain people, I realized as I face these things vibrationally or gradually, they begin to fall away by the wayside. It's nothing personal, it's literally vibrational, but it's in the sense of that I had to acknowledge and go inward. So being judged, being ostracized, being crucified, being whatever it is by other people, I realize I'm able to become aware. My heart is able, because my heart is clear, is able to detect and navigate people's woundings or their own internal conflict that has nothing to do with me. But as I face myself and honor who I am and heal through my unhealed or unresolved traumas and whatever it is, whether people say, oh, he's putting on a show and this and that, know thyself, meaning I know me better than anyone. So the hate, the naysayers or whatever, I don't expect anything else but the hate, the distraction, or whether they are unconsciously aware of what they're doing, or or actively knowing what they're doing. So in that, I tell myself, I didn't make you my enemy. You made yourself your my enemy. And in that, again, you're an enemy with yourself, because there's an African proverb that says, if there's no enemy within, there's no enemy without. And this is what I'm seeing play on a global scale, no matter where we are, no matter who's here, no matter who's there. There's an equal playing field right now. And the only enemy is the inner me. And see, a lot of people won't get that, or go right over their head. So again, a lot of these emotions, which are guides to a better you, a beautiful you, I wanted to avoid. That was a version of me. These people that was in my life were versions of me. And I had to give gratitude, because I was like, well, how could I be who I am and not realize, like, my mother and or father or anybody else I was connected to was a catalyst to my own inner growth, to my own expression of me, being who I am now. And there will be others who will come along to simply guide me back to love, which is loving myself, which I feel is source, or the God within, or the creator within. We all came here in a way to guide each other. And that's all I'm being. I don't proclaim to be nothing. It's just like, if you can see that everyone in your life is a catalyst or guiding you, either with their actions, whether they're unconscious of it or whether they're consciously of it, because a lot of what I just went through with this helps me see how a lot of people are really actively doing what they're doing, or unconsciously. So that lets me know that I have more compassion for myself and them. And that being said, I'm going to leave y'all with this, is that ways that you could find a solution to whatever you experience. It says repressed emotions, how to let go or release. I like to say let go, is to acknowledge. Learn to acknowledge your emotions. And working through your traumas is one. Shadow work, like, look into these things. And shadow work, I feel like, is just facing your own shadow. And that has the link to do with, these repressed emotions, or suppressed emotions, or, unresolved traumas. And it says intentional movement. And I'm not sure, like, you can look that up on your own, but I don't know if that's like, I feel like how I can relate that is like, be more intentional with what you're doing. And it says stillness. And that's one thing I've been doing, is like being to myself, what they call hermit mode, or just learning to be with self. And I also put beside stillness is breath work. And it's like, if you have people unconsciously not knowing what they're doing, they're not even conscious the fact that they're breathing. Meaning that they're aware that they're in the moment of being present. So I also put that there because I've learned through my own stillness. Like I'm telling you, I've been going through the motions, boy. Because I told you, emotion or ocean, emotion, action. Shit, I was cooking the other day and I just, something just came up. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, and how I could link that to repress. It's like, if I went through something with, let's go back to like my earliest childhood with grandmother or mother or father, anybody. You can relate this to yourself. Think about how much stuff that we have suppressed or like has been repressed, and then how much we have after that has that's been coming up. And that's why I was cutting something and I just started crying. I'm like, what the and I told my partner, I was like, I don't know what's going on. But I realized that she was also going through the same thing. And a lot of us are. And at that moment, I wasn't trying to make sense of it because I was having thoughts. I was having a lot of things because that's the thing that's linked to your mental well-being. Like, people can have thoughts like hateful thoughts or certain things that you don't know why this is happening. And a lot of this can be linked to, again, we learn our emotions and nurturing and who we are first from our mothers. So if you're talking about repressed emotions and you're also talking about how they have actively suppressed their own emotions, come on, yo. Do you know how much like people have, oh my God, this is so powerful. How people have actively, like, due to the fact of avoiding like going to work, having to go to work, and then coming home with not only these repressed emotions, but through their actively going out, clubs, whatever you want. I'm just using things, actively going out, and it may have been fun to them, but look at the fact of through their addictions, how they became addicted to certain things, whether it been certain drugs, and how the fact of all that, because from experience, like I used to do that. I remember I could use one. I would drink so much to where I didn't even realize, like, not only that was connected to the repressed emotions, because it was linked to mom and dad or people that I knew that would drink, and they were actively suppressing this shit. Like, literally, they was actively, like, purposely not wanting to feel, and that's a form of trying to be numb. So you see people do that with drugs a lot. You see people do that a lot with, they have learned it so much or inherit these things, these behaviors from, their guardians or whatever, and this has been passed down. And so part of being a generational curse breaker is like, okay, you gradually through the transition wondering why you won't, your ancestors or you've been calling to heal, and so you're gradually getting away from that, not just the environment of people, but you no longer want to drink. And it's different for everybody because people have a balance. Like I said, I'm not here to tell people what to do and how to do it. But what it looked like for me is what I saw, how it was overindulging or the self-abuse behavior, the knowing how it links to my lineage, to where, again, how the self-harm, the self-abuse, the self-inflicted wounds, on how that could be linked to the fact of, do I want this to continue the generations after me, the bigger picture with the youth? So with that being said, you're talking about how all of this is linked to health, to high risk, blood pressure. A lot of things, we know in certain communities, because again, these things aren't taught. We never had this demonstrated. We didn't have these people who were actively saying, hey, instead of going into this, We grew up. This was natural for us. Not for me, because again, the survival aspect was so much of what we're coming out of now. I'm thriving, and I choose to thrive. I choose not to survive, because that survival mode or that aspect was, you seeing people now as you gradually ascend or elevate or evolve. There's a grieving process you go through, because yeah, you love these people, but how that can look unconditionally, or um, these people loving you from in a conditioned state because they want to see you there. They're drowning, because I like the word emotion. It's like ocean. If you put, what is it? Yeah, EM and then ocean, literally. They're drowning in their emotions, and they want you to drown with them. You can link this to narcissism. You can link this to all these things emotionally. They are drowning in their own um um not being accountable. They're drowning in their own shit, basically. And they've been in it so much. Um, what's that saying goes? It's like you could be around people so long in their they've been doing it so long. You gotta realize people been doing it so long, like the shit they've been in, and literally that they got so comfortable with the smell that they don't even see. They got so comfortable, like they conform to it. They think that it's and you know these people in your life. They associate themselves with the fact of pain is normal. Fear is normal. Being in a place, low vibration of shame and anger, they assume, and being consumed by these things. And those of you that know that you're elevating and evolving, those things literally metaphorically die away. Because here you are, this caterpillar in these communities or in these places, in a dark place, and you can tell the energy, and you are choosing that caterpillar to elevate, go to a tree, go to a higher state of awareness. And in that, you're choosing to blossom or become a butterfly. You're choosing to go within yourself to see and acknowledge and take into account these repressed, seeing what has been repressed, seeing what you have suppressed, and seeing how that is linked to you and everyone else that has came before you ancestrally. And so in that, of course, you're going to be talked about, because you're not doing what they're doing. And so think about the powers that used to be. The old narrative is falling apart. So you're choosing, well, do I want to be a part of this any longer? See, once you choose yourself and you're learning to love yourself and honor that, all these things come up. That's what the shadow work aspect is. You're facing your own shadow. And then as you're facing your own shadow, you realize that your shadow, when you walk, when the sun out, your shadow don't leave you. So your darkness, you become one with your darkness, yin and yang. You become whole. So in that, you will be able to recognize those who really are staying or wanting to just be in this dark place and not realizing that they are the light, and want to become whole within themselves, and wanting to see that life is truly a balance. So again, with all of this is to say that it's a process, and that process look different for everybody. And so, no one gets it overnight. The healing journey is a lifelong journey. It's things that I'm coming into at a certain age. But what I won't subscribe to is being shameful. See, as you elevate and get to and become more vibrant, and meaning that the more you face your darkness, your light begins to illuminate. And a lot of us already have this within us. So you're talking about a fact of you loving yourself and honoring these things that people have avoided for so long or suppressed for so long. And you're choosing to rise as a phoenix and rise above that. Of course, they're going to hate it, because that's a part of the fear, shame, guilt, pain, all these things that are within them. They hate that part of themselves. So that reflected back to you, of course they're going to, voila, magic. Of course they're going to project from their own inner experience or whatever they haven't, acknowledged within themselves. And there you have it. So am I surprised? Absolutely not. That's not going to stop the show. The show must go on. One monkey don't stop no show. This train gonna keep on rolling. This thing in life gonna keep on going. I hope I said that song. I love that song. But I relate that to the fact, like, it's just what it is right now. And it's a beautiful experience because, again, this goes back to the inner peace. You realize that people are conflicted with themselves, and in a lot of people that are going to go through a lot of things right now, is people that are going against the current. They're going against the flow and not with the current. I learned that with the jellyfish. Look that up, the jellyfish totem. The jellyfish just floats along. But again, this was great. I appreciate you all sending love, light, blessings, and harmony, clarity, abundance, prosperity, love. May you face these things and realize, like, it was you all along. You were sent here to face these things. Nobody else but you. There were others that will be aligned with you that will come into the awareness and the beauty. I was telling my partner, I said the beauty of it is that they won't shame you for it. See, that shame that they're feeling and that guilt and stuff, like, the world is changing. Everything is changing. You'll be guided and be amongst those who they see you. Because we all want to be seen, and not just from a physical aspect. They're going to be able to see you on a spiritual aspect. They'll be able to see within because they have done the inner work or see themselves. So they realize, like, oh, this is just another version or aspect of myself to where, well, what is this here to teach me? What am I here to learn from this? Instead of, that egotistical stuff that, again, it's like a balance. Just continue to show up for you and be a beacon of light. Peace and blessings. Shalom.